I just finished watching the John Wick series, and I'm kind of confused because I don't really think the movies make sense. And I'm not talking about the ways that they sort of bend reality, where John Wick can like fall 3 stories and not die, or where assassins will, instead of just killing the guy that they want to kill, will engage in a high-stakes card game, stuff like that. I accept that as the heightened reality of the movie to make something that is fun and interesting to watch. What I have an issue with is the way that John Wick is presented as our protagonist, the guy that we should root for, the guy whose actions the movie wants us to agree with. Because we continually see John Wick jeopardize his friends. We continually see him asking big favors from them that put them at odds with the High Table, which is sort of like the governing body of the assassins in this world. He does this with Winston, with Sharon, with Doc, with Sophia, with Koji, at great risk to themselves. When John Wick gets excommunicated and needs some help, as a last resort, he goes to his Russian family tribe thing and tears up his ticket, symbolically breaking his bond with them so that way he can get to the place that he needs to go. But then when time comes around that he needs something else, he goes back to this Russian family and pleads for their assistance. And they refuse, reasonably, I think, because his murder spree had led to the High Table punishing them. And how did John Wick respond? By saying it's all the High Table's fault, that the High Table is our common enemy. Like, dude, the High Table did what they did because you killed the Elder. And not only is he irresponsible, he's hypocritical. In the second movie, Santino comes to John Wick and presents him with his marker, the marker that bounds John Wick by blood to assist Santino, and John Wick refuses to honor it. And then only like days later, he goes to Sophia, because he needs help, John Wick needs help, and says, you have to honor this marker. This is your blood, isn't it? And it's like, dude, what the heck? Like, have some consistency. And maybe he has some big reason for doing all this, right? Maybe he has some big reason for why he needs to stay alive, some mission he's going on, right? But when the Elder asks him why he values his life, he's like, to remember my wife. Her memory exists in me. Like, what? Dude, I'm sure you love your wife, but that seems like not a big enough reason to risk your friends losing everything. So is there sense to be made of a movie series that seems to affirm the selfishness, hypocrisy, and irresponsibility of their protagonist? And I've been thinking about that, and maybe there is, if we think about it in a certain way. As I've been thinking about this movie series, especially the 3 sequels, they seem to be characterized by this conflict between rules and friendship. The High Table and all their folks exist in a system of rules, and John Wick and his folks exist in a system of friendship. And that's an interesting framework, right? In a lot of action movies, it's usually just like good guys versus bad guys. But in this movie, where they're all bad guys, where they all have killed lots of people, it adds a complex layer between the assassins, where a lot of them are former friends and colleagues of John Wick and are then hired to take him out. And within this conflict of rules and friendship, the movie presents the friends who break the rules in order to help John Wick as good and righteous, and the friends who abide by the rules of the High Table as sort of unfortunately so, and maybe understandable, but, you know, they're kind of making the wrong decision. But why does the movie do this? Why does the movie feel like it's just understood that the rules should be broken? And in order to think about this, you know, we can get a little meta and think outside the movie. Imagine the intended audience of this movie. I mean, it's a well-made movie, right? But it's an action movie, and so it's probably targeting a group of sort of middle, lower-class, common people. You know, that's who will probably enjoy it the most. And you can imagine that a lot of times these people in the lower economic classes tend to get screwed over by the system, or at least feel like the system, the rules of the system, screw them over while the people up on top are doing whatever they want.
But the rules are that you're spared if you tell the truth. Oh. And I just told you the truth.
Oh, there are rules?
Right?
But you know something, Greg? There are no fucking rules.
So in that way, I can imagine it feels very cut and dried to just accept that, of course, the High Table and the rules are the bad guys. Of course, we should not just abide by what they say. And I think the movie does an effective job at showing why this is a reasonable belief to have. Because when the High Table wants something, they use the rules that they created in order to get exactly what they want. In the third movie, they want to kill John Wick. So first they put out a bounty on him. They tried to incentivize the whole group with money in this sort of bounty system that they have a whole process for. And then when that doesn't work and he gets to the Continental, they deconsecrate the Continental to make it so that way he cannot have refuge there. And then whenever that doesn't work, they suggest a parlay so they can come up with some kind of deal. They keep going back to the existing rules so they can maintain some element of control. But do not forget that they know the ins and outs of these rules. They know how to use them to their advantage, and they are kind of the ones who control the rules. Whereas John Wick and his friends do not have that luxury. So it would seem by necessity that they're forced to rely on something deeper, a bond, a friendship, even just a mutual respect of each other in order to get what they want, in order to have success in their own way. And I'm sure seeing someone fight against the rules of the system can be very cathartic and relatable. In the climax of Chapter 4, John Wick has to get to the duel on time, or else he forfeits the duel and dies. I mean, that sounds fair, right? You just show up on time. But the Marquis and the High Table, by extension, use the full brunt of their money and power and network to do everything they can to try and slow John down, so that way he is forced to forfeit, because it's your fault you couldn't make it there on time, that's your fault. And you can probably draw the symbolism out here about where by working within the rules, technically you still disadvantage the people on the lower end of the system. So in thinking that way, maybe all this friendship, maybe all this stuff does make sense, because we're all just trying to work together, and we have to rely on these bonds in order to beat the system, in order to beat the rules of the High Table, right? So does it make sense? Well, almost, because the dark side of friendship is revenge. If we go back to the very first movie, all this stuff started because John Wick wanted to get revenge for his dog's death. And at the very end of the series, the final post-credit scene of Chapter 4 shows a character about to avenge a death. We're bookended by this cycle of revenge for the people that we love, for the people that we care about. And when does it end? Does it ever end? That's the dark question we're left with when we operate on this bond of friendship against the rules. In the first movie, after discovering that his son killed John Wick's dog, the New York Mafia boss calls him up and to convince him to stop his killing spree.
John? Let us not resort to our baser instincts and handle this like civilized men to move on.
By hanging up the phone, John Wick in the movie makes a point. Civilized men do not take blood. And John Wick believes, the movie believes, that blood must be shed in order for us to drink in peace. And I just don't think that makes sense. What do you think? Do the John Wick movies make sense? Should I be excommunicado for my beliefs? Be sure to tell me in the comments below. Also, are you excited for the Ballerina movie coming later this year? The little spin-off movie with Ana de Armas. We'll see if that's any good. I did like these movies. I'm glad that the fourth one sort of tied everything together, because I was not with it up to that point. But anyway, all right. I'll see you next time. Bye.